when we were unsaved. We carry denominational baggage. We carry the doctrines and traditions of men over. We get caught up in what some denomination in the past that we were affiliated with might have taught us, things that our parents may have taught us. And we have a tendency of putting them over what God says. And that was another thing that Paul warned us about. Again, you don't have to turn there, just let me read it. I'll give you the reference. It's in 1 Corinthians chapter 4, where he says in verse 6, 1 Corinthians 4:6, he says, "And these things, brethren, have I in a figure transferred to myself and to Apollos for your sakes, that ye might learn in us not to think of men above that which is written." Beloved, that's what has happened to us. You know, we to some degree, and we're all different. I'm not pointing my finger at anybody because I'm just the same way. But to some degree, all of us, it varies, but we suffer from these things. We end up putting men above that which is written. You've got to be careful of that. All right, now then, look here. Look here. 2 Timothy chapter 2. Look at this. Now, again, in what context is this statement made? It's not made in the context of salvation, but rather sanctification. Look at this. Verse 19. 2 Timothy 2:19. "Nevertheless, the foundation of God standeth sure, having this seal. The Lord knoweth them that are his." The Lord Almighty. See? The Lord knoweth him that are his. And he knows how to supply our need. "The Lord knoweth them that are his. And let every one that nameth the name of Christ depart from iniquity." And again, the iniquity, don't you think, now just stop and think for a moment before we go any farther. Don't you think that iniquity could also, not just the things that we do in the flesh, those temporary things that I was just talking about, nasty things that we can do in the flesh, but don't you think that iniquity is simply disobeying what God would have you to do in the age he's dealing with you in? You know, to Israel, iniquity would be disobeying his commandments and what he instructed them to do through Moses and the prophets. That would be iniquity, don't you think? Well, today, let's carry it a step farther. Today, as members of the body of Christ, the iniquity then would be going contrary to what he has instructed us to do through the Apostle Paul, who is our apostle, the apostle to the Gentiles. Don't you think that this then would be iniquity?
Yes.
Amen.
Amen.
So, beloved, when he says something like this, "Let everyone that nameth the name of Christ depart from iniquity," I would think that it would also involve departing from doctrines and traditions that are contrary to what God would have us do today. Don't you think? All right. All right, now look at this, beloved. Let's go on. Verse 20. "But in a great house there are not only vessels of gold and silver, but also of wood and of earth, and some to honor and some to dishonor." Now, beloved, in a great house. Now, what could the great house be? Just stop and think now. Let's keep it in the context. Let's keep our thoughts together. What is the great house?
The body of Christ.
The body of Christ, the church of the living God. That's the great house.
Right.
We're the house of the living God. What would be the great house in the Old Testament? The temple in Jerusalem. That's the great house. Now, I don't have time to explore this, beloved, but it's there. You can do it on your own personal Bible study. You can check these things out. In the Old Testament temple, there were vessels not only made of gold and silver and precious stones attached to them, but there were also vessels of wood and earth. That is, pottery. There was also these vessels. Now, just stop and think for a moment. In your own house, you have vessels that are to honor. That is, that might be made of fine porcelain, fine crystal. You might have pewter or even a gold. Maybe you might even have a gold bowl. I don't know. Or a bowl made from silver. There, and you might have something like that. But that would be considered a vessel unto honor, wouldn't it? And so, what would you do with that vessel of honor? What would you do with it?
Display it.
You would display it.
Right.
Usually you would either put it in a china cabinet, or you would have a special cabinet where you would put it in where it could stand apart and people could see it and admire it, right?
Right.
But now a vessel that is made out of wood or pottery, an everyday vessel, now what do you do with that?
You hide it.
Yeah, you put it away. You don't worry about it. You use it and you put it away. Okay? Now that's what it's talking about when it says honor and dishonor. It's not talking about dishonor in the sense of something bad. That's a dishonorable action. That's not what it's talking about. Because see, in the Old Testament temple, there were vessels made of wood and earth, that is pottery. There were where the priests used these things, as well as gold and silver. So the gold and silver vessels were used probably in the innermost part of the temple, whereas the wood and the and the earthen vessels were probably used in the outer part of the temple for daily use. But the thing is, it's not something, it wasn't dishonor in the sense of something being bad. It's something that was in the sense that it's not what you would consider a very valuable piece of utensil or vessels. Okay? Now then, it goes on. Okay, he says now, gold and silver and wood and earth. Okay, some to honor and some to dishonor. Now then, if a man therefore purge himself from these, that is an honor, as being a vessel of dishonor, he shall be a vessel unto honor. You see, supply the thought. The thought is there. If a man purge himself of these, of what? Of vessels of dishonor. You purge yourself from being this, you will be what? It's self-explanatory. He shall be a vessel unto honor. And what's the next word? Sanctified. That is set apart. Sanctified, set apart. And meet, that is fit for the master's use and prepared unto every good work. Now then, well, let's put it on a different level. When a vessel, any kind of particular instrument, or in the operating room, a vessel or an instrument, operating a surgical instrument, in order to be fit for the doctor's use, what's got to be done to it?
Sterilized.
Sterilized. It's got to be, well, sanctified, right? It's got to be set apart from the ordinary utensil or instrument, right? Well, we can put it on that plane. So that's the idea, that you set yourself, if you purge yourself of these things. If a man, now notice where the responsibility lies, beloved. It lies on us, the responsibility. If a man therefore purge himself from these things, he shall be a vessel unto honor. And here's another misunderstanding about every good work. What is a good work? Now, I've covered this before in times past. I think both in Sunday school and from here. And that is that there are two types of good works, beloved. There's a good work that can be seen. This podium here is a good work.